Okay, quick little update on the TTR250. So I was out on it last week up at Sweetlamb Adventure Academy. It's a private facility, and I got an off-road training weekend there, or a few days there, with the guys at the Gatti Training Centre. They run Sweetlamb, and I booked it out for people to come on their own bikes and get some tuition. With it being a private facility, I took up the TTR250, which I've got to be honest, was the best decision I made. It was a real reminder, that if you buy a light, small, cheap bike, it's very easy to have a lot of fun on it because you don't worry about the risk of damaging it. The lightweight means it's flickable and fun, and without a huge amount of power, you can wring its neck and not feel like you're going to kill yourself. And the reason I bought this was just to see, like, is there any value in buying an old Japanese trail bike? Because a lot of people say there is, and instead of buying a new Vogue or a CRF, people say, why don't you get an old Japanese bike? Well, there's pros and cons, and I think the pro is that the bike of this generation was very capable, and it was more capable than we probably gave it credit for at the time. I think we've glazed over this sort of stuff. We've moved forward, we've moved upwards, more power, lighter tech, and all the stuff that dominates the enduro market, and then also the adventure market. With the big KTM's, the big Ducatis, the big BMWs, and then the big Husqvarnas and the enduro bikes. It sort of left these simple air-cooled carburetted bikes, I guess, in a different century almost. I know emissions has probably helped kill these bikes off. It's not possible now to get a carburetted air-cooled bike, or very difficult to get it through emissions these days. So that's probably one reason. But time has been very kind to this type of bike. It's lightweight, which means it's very truckable, very manageable. Don't feel like you're going to get into trouble if you start to tip. It's very simple technology. It doesn't take a lot of riding. Very chuggable off the bottom end, so it doesn't feel peaky, like as though you're going to stall it very easy. Power-wise, you've not got enough to get yourself into trouble. And just the whole ergonomics of the bike means that even as a novice rider, you could get on this bike and do some trail riding. The seat height's probably going to be a little bit tall for some. It's about 900 mil, and even I found it a little bit tall at times, but then it's a lightweight bike, so you can get your feet down and hold yourself up quite nicely. So it's actually a brilliant bike. It makes you realise this for so many people would be the perfect package. And Austin Vince proved with the DR350s going around, Mondo Enduro and all that sort of stuff, that these smaller, lighter bikes will go around the world or go wherever you want. You've just got to do it in a different way. But the market went in a different direction and went for power, prestige, performance, and all the other stuff. And as I say, left this behind. I think the danger, obviously, with buying a 20-year-old bike or whatever, certainly a trail bike, is that it's been used and abused by many more people before you. I don't know how many owners this one had. I think it was stolen and recovered. And the guys at Sweetlamb, after they'd followed me for a mile or two, said, I think that's bent or there's something out of shape. And it's true, when somebody else rode my bike and I was behind it, you could see the front wheel to the left hand side of the rear wheel, so something's slightly out of alignment, whether it's the spaces in the front wheels or not. It also had a little fluff and a cutout on me, which I think was just dirt in the carb, so that certainly wasn't the end of the world. But for a 20-year-old bike, which I paid 1,400 quid for, the way it rides, the way it makes you feel about riding it, a lot of fun. Whether you'd want to ride it 2 whales and back, maybe not, but when you're on trails, you realise with the right bike, people can go anywhere. And we have lost sight of that a little bit. Brings me on to the competition with the Vogue 300 Rally or modern bikes, and up at Sweetlamb I also got a chance to ride Ben, who is a guy who helps me on the tours. He came up on his 300 Rally, which has got about 12,000, 14,000 miles on it, and there was also Matt there on his brand new CRF 300 Rally, both of which bikes I own, so I've ridden them extensively. But being able to ride them back to back straight off of this was a good way to just make an immediate conclusion as to where the bikes sit. That Vogue, I've got to say, in isolation, some people will say it's a bit rough. It's a rough engine, not as refined as a Honda, and it is. It's a KLX 300 licensed copied engine. But at Sweetlamb, I think the reason why a lot of us like that bike is because I'd never put two and two together before, but it's got an old school dirt bike feel to it. That slight roughness in the engine, the ergonomics, the suspension. When I was going around the same loop as I was doing on this, I was having as much fun on that Vogue as I was on this almost. Yes, it's a little bit heavier and you could feel the weight through the headstock and around that area because you've got more cockpit, but the way the attitude of the bike was very reminiscent of this. Yes, better suspension on that Vogue, more travel like it's got on this, it'd improve it still, but there was a DNA that had ran through from this generation of bike through to the Vogue, and I think that's why I liked it. The CRF, It got elements of that, but you can see how the refinement that Honda have put through that bike has probably dragged a little bit of character out of it. It's still a great bike, but I think if we're looking for something that carries on the DNA, the attitude, the flair of these types of bikes, I think it's more the Vosges than the CRF. And that's not to bring down the CRF. It's just the roughness of the Vosges is quite nostalgic, let's say. I think the beauty of the Vosges and the Hondas though is that you could easily jump on the road and go up to Wales on them. That extra weight means that they carry more fuel, they carry a little bit more stability, better seat comfort, lower seat height in the Honda's case. So there's definitely an upshot in going new, and then obviously you've got the newness. Do new bikes go wrong? Very rarely. That CRF I've been running for 5 years now has never missed a beat. It's just a chain and sprockets on it, and the Vosges has been very good as well. Is a Vosges going to be as good as this TTR in 20 years time? No, I don't think it will. And in fairness, when I dropped Ben off at the services, I took his bike back down on my trailer and we'd had a chat. We all drove down together in the van back down to Southwest. His bike wouldn't start, and he had to get recovered, and it turned out to be a side stand switch that had failed. So the Vosges is not going to be made as well as a 20-year-old Japanese bike, but then in terms of taking into account inflation, it's not the same price. It's a lot cheaper than a modern day TTR. So to conclude, hell of a cracking bike this. Best bike I bought for 1,400 quid. I don't care if it's out of alignment, adds to the charm. We'll call it the Crab. It's a shame that there's not more about. I asked on Facebook what else is there out there equivalent to this, modern equivalent, and I think we've got the GPXs, which are American branded Chinese bike, air cooled still, so I think they're going to have a lot of characteristics similar to this. And we've got a Fantic there, that's out. What else? We've got the new Beta out, we've got CRS. So there's stuff out there, but if you get a good one, a good old Japanese trail bike, I think you're gonna have a lot of fun. Just buy carefully and just be wary that 20-year-old bike's got 20-year-old problems. I've had a few people down here on DRZ 400s, old ones, similar age to this, maybe a little younger, and they both had loads of problems with them. One can put up with it and he likes the bike that much, but the other one, he's had enough of it, wants to get rid of it. So would I buy a 20-year-old Japanese bike to go touring on, or like long distance? No. I've ran enough tours where people have had to call in the AA for their old trail bikes that have broken down to know that new stuff generally doesn't break down. So yeah, if I want to do long tour trail riding like down to the Stella or Morocco, I'd take a new bike every day. But if I wanted something to blast around the lanes, not worry about if it got broken, dirty or ruined, I don't think you can go wrong with a £1,400 TTR. As I say, best bike I bought for that sort of price every day of the week. So that's it. I'll get out on it, do a bit more trail riding around here where it's a bit more technical. Just want to give it a go there. But yeah, over at Sweetlamb, incredible. I mean, it's an environment that is amazing. And actually putting this bike in the environment of a training facility for people on bigger bikes, it does make you realise that if you go light with a bike, you don't need the training, you don't need the skill, you just need to give it a go if you've got the right bike. With somebody turning up on even a CF Moto 450, a Himalayan, any of the 800s, certainly any of the 1200s, you need tuition before you're going to go out there and hurt yourself. Something like this, you jump on it and ride it, and that's the beauty of it. So yeah, happy days. All right, cheers.